Hey there, guys. So I want to thank you for taking the time to check out today's live stream. I apologize. The every time I set it up, the stream somehow it does something wrong whenever I get started, even though I have it already set up beforehand. Right when I press record, of course, the stream goes crazy and it doesn't show up correctly. So I apologize for the delay. And hopefully things will be fine. I don't know why it does that. Like I'll have the stream ready like at least 30 minutes before I even start. But then I start the stream and my screen stays stuck on the screensaver for my recording. I don't know why it does that. It randomly the screen for some reason whenever I start recording right away, even though it's already set up, it doesn't show up correctly. But we're good now. Again, I apologize about that. That's the reason why it took me a second, is because of the screen having issues, and I don't know why it does that. But anyways, again, guys, I do want to of course, appreciate your time, and thank you for taking the time to check out this live stream, of course. We're going to go over the two store to grow problem, and I'll explain basically what that means and go into detail on this particular topic. So, if you guys find these streams helpful or valuable, please share them. I've been working hard for a few years doing these streams, and the traction that I've got from them has mainly been from YouTube and them being re recorded. But I'm really trying to grow these streams and I want to get a bigger audience on here. And the reason why I say that is that because I've been doing these for quite a while and it's been a constant journey trying to grow the stream on here, and I want to do everything I can to grow. So if you do find these helpful, please share them as much as possible because I've been working hard to put these presentations together and get this stuff together and again get all of this information out there. I don't just do this for me. I want to get this information out there. This is free information that anybody can make use of, and I just want to do everything I can. I don't want to sound like I'm angry about anything. It's just I've put in a lot of effort into this, and it is frustrating that it takes so long for me to really get the traction on this content because of the effort I've put into it. I know that's just a part of the game, but if you guys do find it helpful, please share it. So, what we're going to be, of course, going over is this topic. One other thing I do want to mention is I do have a website, which is bponlinefitness.com. There's a ton of information you can find out on there related to online fitness coaching. There's also free information that I give out on the various information, whether that be nutrition, whether that be fitness, workouts, anything to that effect. Definitely check that out if that's something that you're interested in. I do have free information outside of just the, information you can learn from fitness coaching. So check that out if that's something that you would like to learn more about. So with all that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get into this topic. So of course we're going to be going over the two sort of grow problem. These are some of the points that we're going to be discussing. We're going to go over why soreness does not equal muscle growth, as well as the recovery debt. Nobody notices until progress stalls. Performance is a better progress marker than pain. The destroy yourself fitness culture problem. Why beginner mistakes soreness. Why beginner why beginners mistake soreness for effectiveness. The nervous system fatigue behind constant soreness. Smart hypertrophy training and stimulate, recover, and repeat, and then why nutrition and hydration affect soreness more than people think. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to really go over why soreness is something that you should be aware of, but it should not dictate basically progress. You should not see it specifically as a form of progression. Now, it can be a form of progression, but you need to look at other factors that are able to show you progression in your workout routine. So, muscle soreness or which is another term known as delayed onset muscle soreness, mainly reflects novel stress and muscle damage, so it's not guaranteed for growth. A natural process that's going to happen in your routine is this delayed onset muscle soreness, which is common. This usually happens 24 to 48 hours post workout. So, this soreness is again basically that reflection of the stimulus that you placed on the body when you did your workout. And this is a natural occurrence that happens. You can build muscle effectively without being extremely sore after every workout. This is one thing that I've mentioned many times before, especially if I've talked to clients who've mentioned about soreness or anybody who asked me a question about soreness. And I always say to them that most of the time I really don't get sore from workouts. It's very rare that I have any soreness. And again, like I mentioned, that is not, your soreness is not an indicator of progression. It's been a very, very long time since I've been, sore from a workout. And even then, since I've not had soreness, I've still been able to progress really effectively. So, again, don't see that specifically as an indicator of progression. So, consistent progress again comes from mechanical tension, quality execution, progressive overload, and recovery capacity. Excessive soreness may reduce training performance, strength output, range of motion, recovery quality, workout frequency, as well as motivation and consistency. So keep that in mind that excessive soreness, again, can be something that can hinder a lot of your progress. And again, this does affect your performance at the same time. If you're having this, what you would call chronic soreness that's consistent and that's not really changing, then that likely means you may need to address more of what you're doing in your recovery. Recovery is a really big concept that I've mentioned many times before when it comes to workouts, because our recovery, again, is where a lot of the muscle growth is happening, because that's where a lot of the muscle repair is happening, where a lot of, when we talk about nutrition and things of that nature, when we're talking about stretching post workout, all of those different aspects of recovery are going to benefit you a ton in helping with the muscle growth process. So, of course, that transitions us into our next topic, which is the recovery debt nobody notices until progress stalls. So, recovery debt is an accumulation of fatigue when training stress repeatedly exceeds your ability to recover. So, this concept is all about balancing recovery alongside your workouts. That's why rest days are such a crucial part of a routine, because it gives the body the needed rest so that when you have those rest days, that's going to help with basically replenishing everything in your body and is going to go into that next workout with, a heightened amount of performance when you're doing those workouts. So, again, keep in mind that recovery debt is the accumulation of that fatigue, and you have to be mindful of balancing your recovery alongside your workouts. You can't let your workouts completely overtake your recovery. Most people do not notice it early because motivation may still feel high while recovery quality quietly declines. So again, like I would have mentioned previously before, is it's a lot about the balance between both of these different methods. So keep in mind that you're not going to fully notice that soreness until later on, especially when you get started with a routine. So you do need to kind of be strategic even when you're starting out. So strength, pumps, focus, and performance usually fade slowly before obvious burnout appears. Again, this can happen, especially again for beginners when they get started. They're going to have that initial motivation and that initial starting sort of honeymoon phase when they go into a routine. But then past that, you still have to be mindful of what you're doing. You have to balance your recovery and your workouts. And again, that's like what I've mentioned many times before is a lot of what we're doing when it comes to a workout routine is balancing all these different metrics with our workouts themselves, our nutrition, our recovery. All of these things have to be balanced in order for you to see sufficient results. Poor sleep, high stress, undereating, dehydration, and excessive training volume all add to recovery debt. One thing I know this doesn't really relate necessarily to everybody, but if you're somebody who's like me and you constantly are in the mode to work out, one thing you have to keep in mind is that you have to still have rest. Your body, even though your mind tells you to keep going, you have to rest. Your body needs the rest. And so your body and mind are almost completely disconnected when it comes to that. Like if you're somebody who's just constantly disciplined and you're consistent, you still have to have rest days. It doesn't matter your mindset. It's great to have that mindset to keep going, but you have to have rest days in order for your body to repair. So, again, soreness is not always a sign of or warning signs. Sometimes the biggest signal is flat workouts and slower progress. If your performance in your workout sort of changes, if you feel like you're not performing at your best in those workouts, then that may mean that you, again, may need to basically change up your recovery. The same thing can be said again, with soreness, like soreness, when you have, even though you're not having that soreness, that may not be a signal, but if you're starting to notice changes in your performance and how you're doing workouts, that is a signal that you need to, again, focus on your recovery. So recovery debt often shows up again as weaker contractions, reduced stability, slower bar speed, and lowering training output. So again, if you're having trouble performing workouts, if your stability is not where it should be, then that means you need to focus on recovery. So the next point I want to mention is the destroy yourself fitness culture problem. So a lot of times, we hear, especially when it comes to the fitness sphere and the influencer space, I guess you could say, is that it's a constant hustle. And that's not how you need to see it. So many people are taught to believe workouts only count if they leave you exhausted, sore, or completely drained. That is something you have to get rid of. The workouts do not have to completely drain you when you get to the end. There's a lot of times where my workouts really don't drain me. I mean, does that mean I'm not progressing? No, because I'm still seeing progress. You have to, when it comes to training, that's like what I mentioned with clients is when you have rest periods, like I always tell them to pace yourself. When you pace yourself in workouts, you're going to give your body enough time to sort of rest between those sets where you're not completely exhausted. So whenever you pace yourself, that is what is going to help you have that feeling of not being exhausted. That is really the biggest thing. And I think a lot of people feel like they have to constantly go. You don't have to do that. That does not mean that you're going to get the best physique just because you're constantly pushing. It's great to push, but you have to be balanced in how you do it. That's like what I mentioned to clients too, is that it also helps to have a period of time where you sort of slow down, like a deloading phase. When you have those periods, it gives your body sort of that, even though you're staying active, it still gives your body that well-needed rest from all of the stress that you placed on it, because you have to think of it in the context that in workouts, you're constantly placing stress on your body throughout every workout. You are tearing muscles in every single workout. That's not a bad thing. That's a part of what happens with muscle growth. But you have to be mindful that what you're doing does place stress on your body. And so you have to balance that out. It has to be balanced properly. So this mindset itself often glorifies burnout, excessive fatigue, and ignoring recovery signals instead of building sustainable progress, which I've always mentioned. Constantly trying to destroy yourself in training can reduce strength output, increase recovery depth, and make consistency harder to maintain. So, muscle growth is built through repeated quality effort, proper recovery, progressive overload, and intelligent programming, and not endless punishment. So, again, that's what I mentioned many times with clients is that it is like you do not have to, of course, you do need to focus on progressing, in your workouts, but it's not something that's like a constant week to week thing that you have to constantly progress. That's like a lot of times when I do workouts for clients, it's usually 4 weeks that I have them in a phase. And then and then from there they go into another phase. And the reason why they'll stay in that duration for that phase is so they're getting adjusted to those workouts. They're not just jumping from workout to workout. They're doing that set of workouts every 4 weeks and they're adjusting to those, mastering the form and technique in those workouts before they transition to something that may increase intensity, or at the same time, it could lower intensity depending on where we're at in a workout. So, why beginners mistake soreness for effectiveness? So, again, recovery debt is accumulation of fatigue when training stress repeatedly exceeds your ability to fully recover. Most people do not notice it early because motivation may still feel high. Recovery quality quietly declines. So, when it comes to soreness, what you need to keep in mind is that with soreness, it's all about, again, why beginners focus on that is that they clearly emphasize that that's what you're supposed to feel in each session, where you don't necessarily have to feel that in each session. What you have to focus on is, again, feeling progression in other ways. That progression does not need to be soreness. So, like what I've mentioned before many times, is that when it comes to basically progress, it could be in different ways. So you could see progress as maybe, again, gaining muscle, which in turn, of course, is going to increase your weight, which is not a negative thing because you're going to naturally gain muscle. But outside of weight, you could think about progress. Instead of soreness, you could think about how you're feeling as far as your energy levels, how you're feeling as far as your performance in your workouts, as well as how you're feeling being able, like keeping your endurance high, like whenever you're doing cardio. Have you improved being able to do cardio exercises? Have you improved your lifting power? Have you gained more strength? Can you lift heavier than you could before? Those are indicators that you should focus on instead of the mindset of being sore in each session. If you can lift heavier than you were before, then that is a form of progression. Progression is all about looking at every other metric you have and seeing that again as what you should focus on when it comes to reaching your goal. So the nervous system fatigue behind constant soreness. So constant soreness is not always a muscle problem. It is often a recovery system problem. So hard training stresses both muscles and the nervous system that controls force production, coordination, and recovery. When recovery is poor, the nervous system stays in a fatigue state, making workouts feel heavier and slower over time. So signs of the nervous system fatigue can include low motivation, poor sleep, reduced strength, slower reaction time, as well as constant exhaustion. So, more soreness does not always mean more growth. It can mean the body never fully recovered from the previous stress. One thing I will mention there, going back to the concept of rest periods, is the reasoning for rest periods is to give your body, especially like, for example, when we think of doing workout splits and we think of, targeting a specific set of muscles, when you target those muscles, you have that specific day you're engaging those muscles. And then from that time and that duration until you come back to them, it's giving your body enough rest and recovery to where when you go into that workout again, that's, let's say, for example, targeting the back and biceps, you're at the proper performance in that workout because you started that workout in the week and you're cycling back to it. And so your body is naturally should be completely recovered by the time you get back to it. And that's why it's really beneficial to have that sort of rest period where, when we do that split, of course, we go into our next workout and our next workout. And as we're going through a routine, we're targeting each muscle group. But in between that duration, we're letting that muscle group rest. And so that's allowing for that sufficient recovery when you cycle back to that, if that makes sense. So that's what you have to think about too. Again, when you have that proper sort of space between those workouts and that rest period, it's going to help with, again, letting those muscles repair and recover, but it's also going to keep you at a consistent performance because your body is well rested, if that makes sense. So smart hypertrophy training stimulate, recover, and repeat. So muscle growth is built through repeatable cycle. So you're stimulating the muscle, you're recovering it from stress, and then you're repeating the process consistently, which is basically what I had just mentioned. So the workout provides the growth signal, but recovery is where adaptation and repair actually happen. So effective hypertrophy training creates enough tension to challenge the muscle without creating unnecessary fatigue that is going to slow recovery. So constant soreness, exhaustion, and burnout often reduce the ability to train consistently and progressively. Recovery habits like sleep, hydration, protein intake, carbohydrates, stress management, and active recovery directly supports that muscle growth process. So you have to keep that in mind. Again, we're repeating this process. We're cycling through this process. And like what I mentioned, it's better to stay in a certain set of workouts for a few weeks, let your body get adjusted to those workouts, make sure that you have a good amount of time, especially if you're doing workout splits, where you're giving those muscles time to recover before you cycle back to those muscles again. So that's again what you have to think about. It's going to be a repetitive process because of course we're stimulating those muscles, we're letting those muscles recover, and then we're just repeating the process as we work towards our goal in particular. So, why nutrition and hydration affect soreness more than people think? So, soreness is not only about the workout, it is also about how well the body can repair after the workout. So, protein again is going to provide the building blocks needed for muscle repair and tissue rebuilding. This is why a lot of times I mention having sufficient protein, especially with a muscle gain goal, because that protein is really amplifying the muscle gain process. Carbohydrates help to refill glycogen, which supports energy performance recovery between sessions. So, what I've mentioned before, I believe I mentioned in the live stream not too long ago, is your proteins and your carbohydrates basically complement each other in a lot of ways. They do help with recovery. Both of them are a part of the recovery process. So keep in mind that your protein is more about the muscle repair, whereas your carbohydrates are helping to keep your performance and your energy sort of stable. That's what's, again, refilling glycogen, which is that energy source in the body. Carbohydrates are basically converted into glycogen in the body. So when you have those combined together, you're helping really amplify that recovery process. So under eating can make soreness last longer because the body does not have enough fuel to repair efficiently. So that's what I mentioned, like when we talk about nutrition and having that nutrition complement your workouts. The reason it has to complement your workouts is because you're putting, for example, if you are doing a muscle gain routine, you're naturally burning more calories and you're burning more energy. And so when you're burning so much energy and placing a lot of stress on your body, it's going to need the proper amount of nutrition and fuel to be able to, of course, repair, but also to basically refuel when you get back into those workouts. So it has to complement each other. If your calorie intake low and your workout intensity is high, it's your results are going to be so slow. You're not going to see those results, and you're going to constantly stay sore because you're not giving the body enough fuel it needs to, again, be able to grow that muscle. Alrighty. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. I really do appreciate your time. I hope that this was helpful and valuable. I feel like this was a very important topic that I think a lot of people would really benefit from, especially for beginners. If you're somebody who's new, to starting a routine and really getting adjusted to a routine, this is a concept I think is very crucial to keep in mind. And I think it's, again, a lot of us really focus on soreness, especially when we get started. If you're a beginner, you likely always think of that concept of being sore, but there are many different factors that can show your progression. And progression, like what I've mentioned, it can be measured in so many different ways. It's like what I always mention too is that you don't need to focus on weight. Like all of these different things that you hear that's pretty common, that people, in outside of may not be fully knowledgeable on all of the information related to fitness. They often have that preconceived notion of, okay, you have to be sore in order to see progress, or in order to see progress, my weight has to be right here. We think about those things, but a lot of times, like what I mentioned, it's all of these different metrics that are going to help you progress. Just paying attention to how you feel, and also, again, like what I mentioned, how you're performing the workouts, all of those different aspects are a form of progression. So you have to think about those instead of all of these little things that we constantly get hung up on and think, okay, that's like a sign that I'm making progress. But what you need to pay attention to the most is how your body is feeling, how you're recovering. Are you making sure that you're getting your nutrition is where it needs to be and being aligned with your workouts? Again, all of those different things. Are you sleeping? Are you having a proper sleep schedule? Are you staying hydrated throughout the day? All of those different things are going to influence how your recovery is and how you really grow in your workout routine. So just keep all of those different points in mind. But with all that being said, guys, I really appreciate your time. I hope that this was helpful to you. Again, you can check out my website, which is bponlinefitness.com. There's a ton of information that you can check out on there related to online fitness coaching, but also you can check out information that's free for you to access, such as my fitness blog. I do have an email list you can sign up to, as well as, of course, I usually try to upload the latest live streams on there as well. But thank you guys once again for watching. I will have another live stream next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. But again, guys, I really appreciate your time, and I'll see you guys in the next one.